Welcome, everyone. As people come in tonight, we're going to talk about actually two things. One, it's actually the 1 year anniversary of the channel, technically tomorrow. And we're going to be talking about the letter that Trump sent to the Norwegian Prime Minister today and kind of what the implications of that might be. So as people come in, throw your thoughts in the chat about what you think about the letter. Um, yeah, hey Brady, what's up, man? Yeah, it has been. The Biden video was the first one, and actually, the plan currently is to redo that one because obviously, stylistically, I think I'm a little different now than then, but also it make it a little less boring, you know. But I appreciate you sticking around because I remember you've been here basically since the beginning, so that does mean a lot that you've hung in with me that long. I don't plan to go anywhere anytime soon. But anyone popping in, just let me know what you think about the letter to the Norwegian Prime Minister, and what do you think the likelihood Trump actually makes any serious moves in terms of trying to actually annex Greenland? Personally, I don't think he's going to do it, or maybe that's just me being cautiously optimistic that he won't. I mean, even now, it's just dumb thing after dumb thing, really. I mean, it's well established that Greenland is not under any threat from Russia or China. They're a NATO nation. They're already under our protection. Basically, if you're a NATO nation, you're under the protection of the United States, or even if you're a country that we want to be in NATO, like Ukraine. Um, it's just dumb showboating. I mean, and really, what it comes down to is, I heard someone. I was watching an Obama documentary once, and they said, when you're a failed president in terms of domestic policy, you start going after foreign policy. But we already have unlimited access to Greenland. They're not a threat in terms of being taken. And someone said, I think that the old trick that the Vikings used to use to make people think Iceland was green and Greenland, to make people think Greenland was cold and Iceland, whatever the phraseology was, that it worked on Trump. Someone said Greenland, and he doesn't realize that it's a frozen block of land. That it's actually pretty hard to mine things there. It's only like 55,000 people there, and they all live on the coast. I don't know that Trump knows that. I'd like to think that he does, because I forget who it was. I think it was, maybe it was his labor secretary from the first term. Um, 1 second. But was it Scott Kasich? Whoever his first labor secretary was, they brought him some data once. It was a report about like manufacturing jobs, and they were telling him, sir, you know, people like the manufacturing rhetoric, but they don't actually want to go work in a steel mill. And he said, I don't believe that. And they're like, well, sir, the numbers say differently. And he said, like it's just a belief I've had for 30 years, and I'm not going to change it. I, I'm sure someone has told Trump that, and depending on who you believe, in private, supposedly he's like a different guy and like he'll listen to things and all that. But I don't know. I don't know what Trump does or does not know, because every time he says something, it's like, oh, no one knows. No one knew healthcare would be so hard. No one knew that Abraham Lincoln was the first Republican. It's like, no, Mr. President, everyone knew all these things. We've always known these things. Ooh. But you can't go around pitching a hissy fit and invading a country simply because they wouldn't give you something you didn't deserve. And then you got another country's leader to just hand over theirs like a participation trophy. It's just the saddest thing ever. Anyone that thinks that Trump has brought international respect to the United States is on weapons grade copium. His leader was stupid. What does the Nobel Peace Prize have to do with it? That's a good question. I mean, he's basically, and why? Because Norway has nothing to do with Greenland. It's like, because you wouldn't give me, and also of the 8 wars he supposedly stopped, the only one that I would have given him credit for a few months ago was the Armenian thing. But even that's broken down. Literally every war that he claims to have stopped either isn't really one, was never happening, or when it stopped, the people like Pakistan and India saying that, like, well, maybe it wasn't India, but Pakistan saying, yeah, Trump had nothing to do with us ending our, whatever our dispute was. Um, Ukraine and Russia still going on, Thailand and Cambodia and all that still going on. Um, Israel and Palestine won't stop bombing each other. I mean, he didn't even force the deal he made with the Taliban in the first term to get out of Afghanistan. But he's like, because you won't give me my toy, my shiny object, I'm just going to threaten to take Greenland. But these things aren't popular. I think there was one poll that said like 85% of people, not just Democrats, Republicans, whatever, 85% of people are not down with the whole annexing Greenland thing. And it's just that vocal minority of a few 100,000 people online that make it seem like people are. So people really got to take, what they're reading on Twitter and Facebook with a grain of salt. Has America tried to take Greenland before? I don't think so. As far as I'm aware, it's always been part of the Danish, kingdom, because they did land there first. But ultimately, it's because there's not really anything there we want. At one point we had, after World War II, I think we had 10,000 odd soldiers there, and I think now we have like 200. If we wanted to build another base there, it would literally be as simple as us just telling them, "Hey, we're gonna build a base." Like, asking permission would just be a formality. We have unlimited access to. We have a military presence there, and that's the other thing. Russia, you can see Russia from the coast of Alaska, so we're already right next to them. If they were going to attack us, they would have done it already. So I don't know. But happy Martin Luther King Day, everyone. Well, I just want to read over this letter because it is just the dumbest thing I've ever seen. And with Trump, imagine the territory that takes in. Dear Jonas, considering your country decided not to give me the Nobel Peace Prize for having stopped 8 wars plus, and keep in mind that it's not just like Norway; it's the Nobel association that makes that decision. I no longer feel an obligation to think purely of peace, although it will always be predominant. It never was, but can now think what is good and proper for the United States of America. Denmark cannot protect that land from Russia or China. And why do they have a right of ownership anyway? There are no written documents. It's only that a boat landed there hundreds of years ago, but we had boats landing there also. I've done more for NATO than any other person since its founding. I think Harry Truman might have something to say about that. And now NATO should do something for the United States. The world is not secure unless we have complete and total control of Greenland. Thank you. And he even signed it 45th president of the United States. He's the 47th president of the United States. He was the 45th. He couldn't even sign his own letter right. It is an unprofessional letter, Brady, but what I would say is this. At least he wrote a letter. Typically, he would just truth this kind of thing out or tweet it out. Give me 30 seconds. The missus needs something real quick. Some of the conspiracy theories he comes up with are crazy. All of them are crazy. And that's the thing is I think he knows better. I really do. Like there are a lot of people that have acknowledged that behind the scenes he says things like, "Oh, I know I lost 2020," you know. And the problem is now is like anytime he does do anything good on the infrequent basis that he does, people are just so turned off to anything he does that it just makes it hard for him to be effective now. And it's like he's going out of his way to do stupid shit. And even his like his trying to rearrange the midterms, that so far has turned out to be a net loss in terms of, I think Texas has really been the only success they've had. I think North Carolina they flipped one, but California crossed out anything Texas had. And even the five Texas created, two of them are they're competitive enough to still go blue. Iowa is going blue? Do you mean like in the Senate? Iowa's not going to go blue in the Senate as much as I want it to. Now, here's what I would say. Texas and Alaska and Ohio have a damn good chance of going. Tellerico is going to get Beto O'Rourke numbers, if not better. Peltola has already won a statewide race in Alaska, and even when she lost in 24, it was by like 5,000 votes. So and considering that Republicans don't turn out when Trump's not on the ballot, she could easily win the Senate seat. And Ohio's running a former Democrat senator. That one's probably the least likely. Oh, for governor? Okay, yeah, that's possible. Yeah. Crazier things have happened. I think Virginia now, they're solidly blue. Here in Georgia, I think we're going to keep Ossoff. I'm pretty sure he's going to get reelected. We just had two public service commissioner elections, and they obviously didn't do like presidential or Senate numbers in terms of turnout, but it was like a 70% to 30% win for Dems. And that's unusual because it was probably 5% normal turnout numbers, but I'm relatively confident that at best the Senate will be 50-50. You're reading Team of Rivals? Yes, Brady. Yes. Oh, that's such a good book. Where's my copy? Oh, such a good book. I listened to the audiobook. I'm going to reread the physical copy when I get around to it. Right now I'm reading Lincoln's Gamble. It's about the 6 months leading up to him writing the Emancipation Proclamation. I'm about halfway through it, and it's fantastic. If you need any more good Lincoln books, What Lincoln Believed by Michael Lind is good. The Fiery Trial by Eric Foner. Tried by War by James McPherson. Let's see. I haven't read it yet, but it's in the pile to be read. H.W. Brands has one about him and John Brown called The Zealot and the Emancipator. That's pretty good. I think that's all the Lincoln books I have. Oh, John Meacham. He's got a good Lincoln book that's on my list. How far into the book are you? And that's why Team of Rivals is such a good book and why Lincoln's such a good movie because it's based on Team of Rivals. There are a few biographies that you'll read that have the power of not even just capturing one man's life, but capturing like half a dozen. And Doris Goodwin is fantastic at that. Oh, okay, you're only on chapter 2. Still, pay attention to all those little details. Every single one of them is important. I actually think that book doesn't spend enough time on the war, believe it or not. But there's also plenty of other, supplementary reading you can do for that. But that's like another thing. Like Chris Christie tells the story about being in the Lincoln bedroom with Trump and the little desk where he wrote the Emancipation Proclamation. And Christie had to correct me. So that's where he wrote the Gettysburg Address. It's like, no, Mr. President, that's where he wrote that on the train. That's where he wrote the Emancipation Proclamation. Bates and Stanton, yeah. Stanton is a cold son of a bitch. which I guess you would need in your Secretary of War. But good God Almighty, like Lincoln would spend a lot of time pardoning deserters. Stanton wasn't having any of that. And then even during the Johnson administration, he goes really off the deep end. For anyone joining in, we're talking about Trump's letter to the Norwegian Prime Minister and the whole insane Greenland situation. So feel free to let your thoughts be known about that. Oop. And if you like Goodwin's writing, Brady, she's got a whole lot of great books on the Roosevelts that are really good. Do I think Ventura would have a chance in Minnesota? I don't, and here's why I don't. One, he's 30 years older. But you have to look at like the time in which he won compared to now. So in the late 90s, both political parties were very similar, right? Like George H.W. Bush and Bill Clinton were two sides of the same coin. They were both very centrist parties. So it was very easy to make both of them a common enemy. And you have to keep in mind that when Ventura won, the way Minnesota works is you only had to win a plurality. I don't know if that's still the case, but he only won 37% of the vote. So he barely squeaked out the win, and he would have easily been reelected, I think. But now people are so much more partisan, and it's more of a team affair that it would be hard for people to get a third party. It would be hard for him to win third party votes. Um, he's too liberal for a lot of people on the right, and he's not right, and he's too openly against Trump to win over a lot of people on the right. And because Klobuchar is probably going to run for governor, she would pretty decisively win. Walls would have been reelected if he had stayed in it, but I don't think Ventura's got a shot, and I don't know that he's actually going to run. Um, and I'm actually planning for to come out in the summer of like a long form Jesse Ventura documentary, and I'll cover his governorship kind of more in depth. But I don't think he's going to win. But it would definitely get attention. I think he would poll well enough to probably get into the debates again, depending on because I haven't looked into this, but he claims that they've changed the rules in terms of letting third party candidates get in to debates. But I think he could easily get 10-15% polling. I'm really excited to see how the gubernatorial race is going to end up here in Georgia because there's a lot of interesting candidates here. We've got the former mayor of Atlanta running, former lieutenant governor who swapped from Republican to Democrat. We've got the current Secretary of State and current lieutenant governor running on the GOP side. And our governor has yet to endorse anybody. Also, that Ventura video for everyone who's watched it, thank you very much because it's done. I mean, it's exceeded my expectations in terms of how well it's done. I think right now it's sitting at about 750 views. Let me see. I mean, it's doing fantastic. I'm very happy with how it's turned out. Yeah, it's sitting at 745 views, so that is just outstanding. Earlier today, I thought it was slowing down around approaching 600, but it's done 150 since then. But yeah, Goodwin's got some good books on the Roosevelts. Um, 3 or 4 actually, just now that I'm glancing over at my stuff. Eventually, I've gotta do a video showing the room. The problem is my webcam isn't exactly mobile, but showing everything that's on the wall. But man, ever saw is the Lincoln one? Which Lincoln video? I'm trying to remember what Lincoln video did I do? Was it the campaign trail one where I tried to beat Lincoln in the election? That's because I'm shaking this. Oh, the Razor Fist video. Yeah, when I debunked the American Dictator video. Good God Almighty, that's one of the more successful videos on the channel. And Razor Fist is just such a wet blanket of a human being. Just the textbook definition of a contrarian that, and I really do think he believes the dumb shit he says. That's why I think he's a person that likes Trump. He talks very extemporaneously off the top of his head with a lot of conviction, so I have to give him credit there. But good lord, man, is he the most ahistorical person I've ever seen on YouTube? Like he's almost as bad. No, he's worse than Monsieur Z, but he's and like take your sunglasses off, dude. You're inside. He has another video. I haven't done because it's not exactly presidential related. That it's about. I think it's like arguing that the Civil War wasn't about slavery. It's just more lost cause nonsense. I really should start a channel called the Civil War Guy. Because aside from presidents, that really is like, if you were in my office, you'd see to my right is my shelf of presidential stuff, and on the other side, it's my Civil War stuff, and then this entire wall to my left is the War of the Rebellion records. It's 128 books, just collections of documents of the war, and there's a supplemental 100-volume set that I'm looking to get physical copies of. But I wonder what like the odds of Trump invading Greenland are. Like, just for a while, I didn't think he was going to do anything in Venezuela until he started mobilizing ships. And that's the main problem with all this is we can't sit here and tell Russia, no, you can't take Ukraine, and tell China, no, you can't take Taiwan, and then say, well, we can go take Greenland if we want to. Because are you going to make more Civil War videos? I wouldn't necessarily think so. I try, because the main issue with the channel, you don't want to get too scatological or too scatterbrained. I try to fit in Civil War stuff where I can, where I think it works. Like with Lincoln stuff, I'm going to do a video on Grant, a long form video on Grant at some point. That some of it would fit in there, but it wouldn't make sense for me to sit here and do like Lee versus Grant, or like debunking lost cause stuff or anything like that. Do you think NATO would end if we invaded Greenland? No. It would definitely reshuffle the world order. Because you got to keep in mind, NATO is like 40 something countries. So even if we just straight up left it, we would obviously be the biggest kid on the block leaving. Because there's not really any contingencies in NATO for like if we start invading each other. Everyone seems convinced that Trump isn't going to do it. I think right now, what people are strategizing is how can we make this look like a win for him? Because I don't think Trump has the balls to start killing Europeans, which is basically what he would have to do. He'd have to kill some French and some Swedes and some Germans and some English. He did, because he talked about how we pay too much, but Biden, through the Ukraine war, got like 80% of the NATO countries to get up to the 2% GDP on military spending that they were supposed to have. And then once that happened, Trump said, well, we need to be up to 5%, 10%. And these other countries that have more of a social safety net than we do, universal health care, college, things like that, they just simply can't afford it. we spend all of our money on the military. So it's easy for us to kind of big dog our way around and, police everyone because we just have the biggest toys and we have more of them. But the problem is, like, England has nukes, right? So I mean, if it really got down to it, it's really what nuclear powers are going to fight who and side with who. But Trump also doesn't have the authority to withdraw from NATO. That would require congressional approval. Like the Paris Agreement or the World Health Organization, those aren't treaties. Those are just like pledges, so it's easy to exit and enter those kind of things. But NATO has the force of law because the Senate has ratified the treaty. And the Senate's not going to back out of it. I mean, this Senate is proving, even just with people like Murkowski and McConnell and Rand Paul, even Tom Tillis is saying this is dumb. There aren't enough, like, there were enough people to squeak through his reconciliation bill that's just going to get flip flopped when Newsom comes in, but he doesn't have the support to get anything done, really. Even though this ICE budget this ICE bill that's up right now to fund them, it's more than likely not going to get through, and it's not going to cause a government shutdown because the new ICE budget of 200 billion, that's more than we give the Marine Corps, which is just ridiculous. Sending ICE agents into you would think just logistically you would start in the places with the most immigrants, and Minnesota's like 23rd in terms of the number of immigrants. Obviously, in politics, there's a degree of theatrics and show to it, but I hate ICE. I hate what ICE has become. Any government agency can be good or bad. Like 40 years ago, 50 years ago, the CIA and the FBI were not great, but better now. Well, maybe not right now, but we have proven historically you can deport people without terrorizing communities, you know. And it's just a waste of resources because Biden lost on the issue of the border, but he like 6 months before he left, he signed an executive order and it substantially curved the number of entries. And they deported a lot of them too. He has not gotten anywhere near the numbers that he's promised. And the only way he's really getting people, he's getting people that, yeah, Obama deported, I think, 7.5 million in his two terms. I think in his first one, Trump got 2 million, 1.5 maybe. Um, but the problem is people want you to in their mind they want you to deport people that have hopped the fence and they have no paperwork. If ICE is going and getting people, they have their names on sheets of paper, which means at some point they came in either with a visa that they've overstayed or at a court case trying to get asylum. So you can't get enough people that way because that's only maybe hundreds of thousands at best. So they're never going to get these mass deportation numbers that they promised, and they're just wasting money. Like I think the number I saw, like 13% of ICE just in totality is there, and especially when it's like we have confirmed that these people are like J6ers that are running around playing paratrooper. It's dangerous, and people are getting hurt, and people are dying, and that's one thing I'm curious about. How much money in the next term, or maybe even during this one, are we going to be paying out to people left, right, and center that we've either violated their constitutional rights, we've damaged their property, we've hurt them? Some 21-year-old kid is permanently blinded in one eye because these guys are just running around shooting people in the face with pepper balls, standing on roofs, shooting at people. It's just it's a huge liability. Yeah, people have a terribly short-term memory in this country. People can only really remember about 6 months ago at best. So there are plenty of people that 6 months into Biden's term, his approval ratings fell off the cliff. Now Trump's fell off almost more immediately, but they forget, what happened before, and especially right now that we're so deeply partisan, I wouldn't expect that to change anytime soon. But also there's a lot of people who just think that J6 was fake. And that's the problem with the Trump administration is you have so many people throwing bullshit out that it doesn't match up. So you have people saying that it was staged, but then why would he pardon them? It wouldn't make sense to pardon people who are staging a false flag to overthrow you. It also wouldn't make sense to stage a false flag to get rid of a president that's already been voted out. It was just a hissy fit over a lost election. It is the most documented event in human history outside of maybe 9/11. We know exactly what happened down to the fucking second, and there's just no arguing with what happened. And now reasonable people could argue whether or not Trump was directly responsible for that. I think mostly he just kind of sat back and did nothing. I don't think he legitimately wanted that to happen. But when you tell people that, hey, Mike Pence is the only guy that can save us, and he's not going to not certify the election, but at least we got, some election reform out of that, making the vice presidential's role more ceremonial and making objections have to require more than just one of each person in each house. But Vance is going to get creamed in 28. There's just no way that he's not. Do you think Trump has officially become the worst president of all time, and do you think it's not even close? And how bad do you think he has gotten since he has left office to Biden 4 years ago? Um, well, if you watched my live stream where we did the presidential tier ranking, I did put him dead last. I would say Trump is the worst president of all time. I wouldn't have given him that moniker after term one. I think at that before term two, he was in my bottom five. I would have said Andrew Johnson, Franklin Pierce, James Buchanan were worse. But term two, Trump, worst president of all time. And it's not even close because while Andrew Johnson and James Buchanan were bad, they were bad in the context of the law. Like Trump does every day just flagrantly illegal shit because he knows that either the courts are going to rule in his favor, or if they don't, it's going to be months before they get to it, and by then he's doing some other shit to distract them anyway. So they'll even if they say, "Hey, you can't do this," by that point he's just moved on to something crazier. So yeah, Al, I would say he's the worst president of all time. Give me about 30 seconds, guys. My toddler's waking up. I gotta get him back to sleep. False alarm so far. I'm watching him on his monitor camera and stirring a little bit. Yeah, I love WWE. Yeah, you see my CM Punk shirt? Best in the world. If you were this room right here, it's my movie room. It's got all my Star Wars, Back to the Future, WWE, Jurassic Park stuff in there. Those would be my fandoms of choice, yeah. And CM Punk is my favorite wrestler of all time. And people have said this is silly, but right next to Abraham Lincoln, my personal hero. I thought his match with Balor today was pretty good. Very saddened to learn that he's probably going to retire in the next 2 years. It was. Obviously, I would have preferred if he had just kept the title after Money in the Bank and then just ran all the way to the Rumble instead of that stupid crap with Triple H and Kevin Nash and Del Rio and the flip flop and all that. But Del Rio needed the title for the Mexico tour, I suppose. But yeah, 2011 Punk was chef's kiss. And because Punk is anti-ice and anti-Trump and all that, which is funny, considering that Triple H is pretty right wing in terms of being a fan of Trump. He came back too early. I mean, that wasn't his choice. He wanted to stay gone for a while, and Adam from What Culture at the time said, let him just go, let him go defend it in Ring of Honor or New Japan or whatever, and then just make the world heavyweight title the important one. But didn't work out that way. He was gone for what was that, 6 days? At least let him come back the next week on Raw. You know what I mean? Let him be gone for at least 2 weeks. But he did show up at that comic convention and heckle Triple H, so that was pretty funny. I think in the next 5 minutes, roughly, we'll wrap the stream up. Appreciate everyone who's popped in and joined along. Brady, you are a legend as always. Make sure everyone, we're sharing videos around and all that. My goal for this year is just to get the channel monetized, and the way to do that is get 500 subs, get more watch hours on the channel. So just share videos around. Tell your friends about it if you know people inclined to watch this kind of thing. It really does help out. That's one way to help. Who would be your Mount Rushmore of best presidents and worst presidents of all time? Best would be FDR, Lincoln, TR, McKinley. Worst would be Trump, Andrew Johnson, Wilson, and LBJ. My 4 best: Lincoln, FDR, Eisenhower, and LBJ. My worst would be Trump, Johnson, Buchanan, and Wilson. Obviously, Vietnam is bad, but on a domestic front, you cannot argue with LBJ's success. One of the most successful domestic presidents we've ever had. The Civil Rights Act, the Voting Rights Act, a lot of the Great Society stuff, Medicare, Medicaid, these are just S tier achievements. And I've never really been big into McKinley. I don't dislike McKinley, but I've never just felt strongly about him one way or the other. I obviously didn't like a lot of the imperialism stuff and slaughtering people in other places and handing out medals of honor for it, but I always think LBJ gets way too much hate too. If you can see, he's on the wall. Any final thoughts on the Trump Greenland situation from the chat? Well, Kennedy would have signed it. It just wouldn't have gotten done. That's the issue. LBJ had the right connections in the Senate and knew the right moves and procedures and he was a much more skilled politician than Kennedy. The Dixiecrats just were not going to work with Kennedy at all. They just weren't. So it's sad. It's a sad fact that if Kennedy doesn't die, we don't get a lot of that legislation. And we certainly don't get any of the Great Society stuff. Kennedy wasn't interested in doing anything like that, I don't think. He wanted the Civil Rights Act, and probably the Voting Rights Act was not going to get through the Senate, which is one reason he picked LBJ to be his vice president. Kennedy, one of the more overrated presidents, to be honest. I like Kennedy, and one book in particular I can't wait to read. I don't know where my copy is, but it's Reclaiming History by Vincent Bugliosi. It's about the assassination conspiracy and just debunking all that stuff. About 1 more minute, and then we'll wrap the stream up. I think this week's video will be more of an anniversary kind of retrospective on the channel. So talking about future plans going forward, looking back on the last year, because it's already been a year, which is crazy to think that. When I started this channel, I only had one kid. Now I got two. But I appreciate everyone who's followed along with the channel. All this, we're up to 121 subscribers now, which to me is monumental. So thank you for everyone that's watched and liked and shared, commented. I look forward to when we get to 200 and 500 and 1,000 and wherever we go from here. We'll probably do I'm still planning to stream this coming Saturday for we'll be talking about the swing states in terms of presidential elections, Senate elections, and then kind of make some early predictions as to how the midterms are going to go. But thanks for everyone for tuning in. And until next time, never stop learning.